Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Maureen Casey, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families here at Syracuse University. On behalf of my boss, Vice Chancellor Mike Haney, and my colleague who leads the Office of Veteran and Military Affairs here at Syracuse University, Ron Novak, welcome to what we know will be an inspiring afternoon. I would also like to recognize our friends from the State University of New York, Empire State College, for it is they who brought this idea and Sammi to us. Joining us, Walter Williams, Kate Kohlberg, Amy Mirabelli, Mindy Boeing, and Desiree Drindak. Thank you very much for your partnership and for your support for this event. How about a round of applause for our friends? We all know that these events take time and planning to execute. So I wanted to take another moment to recognize a few of my IVMF colleagues that helped to make this happen. Please join me in thanking my Dubai, Jared Perky and Amy. Sorry, Jared, I tried. Phil Chen, Carrie Monahan, our student Nicole, and there are others from the IVMF team that are playing a variety of support roles here. So how about a round of applause for them? It is not often that we at Syracuse University have the opportunity to hear from someone like Sammi Tucker. I will admit that whenever I read a bio like hers, I am equal parts impressed and inspired, and at the same time, just a bit disappointed in myself that I have not done more with what I have been given. Sammi's background is an extraordinary one. She is a veteran of the United States Air Force, serving for a time as a public relations officer at Forts Polk and Knox, and then performed a similar job for the Department of Defense following her military service. After losing her arm in a motorcycle accident, she did the obvious and became an elite compound archer. In fact, she made history as the first woman to represent the United States of America in the 2016 Paralympic Games in the open compound para-archery division with just less than 2 years of shooting experience. Sammi will share with us the practical and relevant lessons she learned in overcoming the many challenges in her life, not only losing her arm at the height of her career, but also childhood abuse and trauma, teenage drug addiction, and attempted suicide. As a dynamic motivational speaker, resilience specialist, and communications coach, she inspires people to find their voice, share their story, and be unforgettable. She is the owner of Sammi Tucker Resilient Living by Design and comes to us from lovely Boise, Idaho. Sammi has graciously agreed to take questions at the end, so we'll facilitate that when she concludes her presentation. I, for one, cannot wait to be motivated. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Sammi Tucker.
Thank you. All right, let's see if did I pay attention when I was taught how to turn this on? I get the thumbs up. Yay, I win. All right. Thank you guys also for not sitting way back there. I really appreciate that. How many Air Force people do we have? Make some noise, come on. The lone clap. Oh my gosh. How about Army? See? You guys know how to make noise. Navy? I'll clap with you. Marines? All right, see? Coast Guard? Okay, well, I'll clap for them anyway. So that's awesome. I am prior service Air Force, 4 years stationed at San Vito, Italy, radio and TV broadcasting. I could not believe they paid me to do that. Then they sent me to Langley, and I paid for every enjoyable moment that I ever had in Italy. So that was a different beast. And then I got out, stayed at home with my kids for 8 years, and then after 9/11, my husband at the time and I wanted to serve again. So I told him, honey, just go re-enlist, we'll make it happen. And he came home and he said, well, I need you to sit down. That's never good. So I sat down and he said, okay, well, I leave for basic training in November. I was like, they are not making you go through basic training. What are you talking about? He said, yeah, but the Army doesn't accept Air Force basic training. I'm like, Army standards, Air Force standards. What about re-enlist did you not understand? So we end up going to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Ever been there? Yeah. Okay, so this is what I saw. Yeah. When I called my dad and told him that we were getting stationed there, he said, "Oh my God, it's the whole of America." And he was kind of right. When I pulled into Fort Polk at 1 o'clock in the morning with my 2 kids, the guard looked at me and he said, what are you doing here? And I just handed the orders. And he goes, "Oh, honey, don't worry." He said, "Fort Polk is the best kept secret in the Army. It's going to grow on you, kind of like the black mold." And he did not lie. Spent 7 years there, was media relations officer, and my job was to tell the soldier's story. So I fell in love with the process of telling story. And I don't know if you guys remember, but the soldier was voted Time's Man and Woman of the Year. So during a conflict where people were not necessarily in agreement with what they were doing, we got to elevate the human above the machine, which I loved. And then I ended up joining a unit, getting ready to train and go to Afghanistan, went to Fort Knox, and ended up like this. And it wasn't because of combat. So I get a lot of questions about how do you do things? And one of the biggest questions I get asked most often is, how do you shoot a bow? So I wasn't born into archery. I grew up on a ranch and we did hunting, so there was rifles and guns, but not archery. And it was 2 years after I lost my arm that my brother, who I call Haas affectionately, because Bonanza, the big 10-gallon hat guy, him, if he and Elmer Fudd had a twin brother, that'd be my brother. So he's like, "Sis, you got to learn to bow hunt." So we go into this store, and I'm looking at the bows, and this guy comes up and starts talking to my brother, and he's like, "No, her." He's like, "Oh, okay, so what can I do for you?" He said, "Well, I want to learn to hunt." And he's like, "All right, so what's your experience?" And I said, "Well, I've never shot." And he's like, "Any weapons?" I was like, "No, guns and rifles." And we get to talking. It's like, I like to hunt, and all he did was zone in on this. And he kind of took a step back, and he said, "Well, honey," condescendingly, "honey, you can't learn to shoot a bow." I was like, "Why?" "Because you have to have 2 hands." I was like, "Really? Like there's a 2-hand minimum? You got to have 2 hands?" He said, "Yes, you pick up the bow with this hand and you draw back with this hand. You have to have 2 hands." So I looked at my brother and he's like, "I don't know, sis." So what I did was I took archery and I put it over in this little box of what I can't do. Because there's certain things that I really, really can't do. I mean, like I can't clap my hands. I'll never be a left-handed arm wrestler. I can't fold clothes or do dishes. Just say, I know, right? It's the little things that I really miss. So I put it in that little box. And the reason I put it in the box was because here's this expert standing before me and laying out logic. He laid out facts. You must have 2 hands. This is how it's done. And I'm a logical person. You tell me truths if they make sense. I'll buy into that. So he was like, 2-handed is not a little truth. It's a big truth. You got to have 2 hands. So I left that in that little box and let that dream die. And about 1.5 years later, I was working at a prosthetist's office. That's prosthetist, not prostitute, in case you get confused. Some people are like, "Oh my." And this guy wheels in at redneck, like big old shoe, cowboy boot, because he's missing a foot, and missing a hand. And we get to talking, and he's like, "How'd you lose your hand?" I said, "Motorcycle accident." He's like, "Yeah, ATV. What's your background?" And I told him, and he's like, "Oh, military, you must like to hunt." And I was like, "Yeah, I do. Still ride horses and shoot and all of that." And he's like, "Well, what about a bow?" "Oh, honey, there's a 2-hand minimum for that." "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, I don't know. That's what I was taught." He said, "You just wait right there." And he wheels himself out of the patient waiting room, and he comes in pushing this round target. And he leans it up against the patient exam wall, and he hands me this bow, and he says, "Now, I've taken this bow, and I put a dog leash right here on this." And he said, "How are your teeth?" I felt like a horse. He's checking my teeth out. He's like, "They real?" I was like, "Yeah, they're real." "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, you're just going to put this leash right back between your molars, and you're just going to bite down. And you're going to push your arm away from your body, and when I tell you to, just relax your jaw." It's like, curious. Okay. So I did that. And the moment I let that arrow fly, it's like the first time you fire a weapon, right? First time, it's just like, yes, I'm hooked. He goes, all right, he said, I'll give you a couple lessons. Show up this week. So I drive to Fresno. I'm in California at that time. I drive, and I trust this guy because he laid out different logic and facts. So all of a sudden, this big truth became a little truth. And I just needed somebody to present a picture of the world that was different. So he enabled me to take this out of the little box of things I can't do and go over here and put it into the big box of things I do differently. And I trusted him because he'd already done that. So anytime you want to do something that's new or different or learn something, model somebody who's already where you want to go. Model somebody who's already been successful at it. I didn't really know that you could model good as well as you could model bad. I grew up in a land, kind of a mystical land called the Badlands of South Dakota, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, in the middle of nowhere. Has anybody seen Dances with Wolves? Yeah. My first boyfriend was in that, and that's where I grew up. Like, so there's nothing. You can see yesterday and you can see tomorrow all at the same time. It's very, very barren. And I rode my horse to a one-room school on the prairie. I'd get up and milk the cows and kick the calves and slop the hogs and feed the chickens and saddle my horse and ride 6 miles to school. And me and 11 other people would be schooled in this one room. And then I'd repeat that day after day. And we didn't really have TV. We had one TV station whose call sign was KDUH. So K-duh was my portal to the outside world. And my grandfather suffered from mental illness. He was bipolar. And he had a concept of family that was quite unique. It reminded me of like a gang where there was one boss and a lot of followers. And so we all lived on his 450-acre ranch, and we weren't allowed to have outside influences or friends. And there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of abuse, and there was a lot of alcoholism. And so I grew up with so many things in this box because there was this criteria checklist that I was judged on daily, and maybe you guys can relate to this, of you don't fit the mold. You don't get to be this type of person who has happiness and healthy relationships, and we don't get to have wealth and possessions and vacations and things because we come from a native tribe, and we are the victims, and we live on government commodities, and we can't trust people, and we are not enough, and we are happy to just get by. And we don't share our emotions because emotions are scary. And we don't talk about the violence, and we don't talk about the abuse. So there was this criteria checklist, and everything that I thought I was in this box. And you model what you see. So by the time I was ready to graduate high school, I had already been assigned an identity. I was to marry a rancher and draw pretty pictures, because I was good with horses, and I could draw. And those were assets to grandfather's life. That's what I was. I was an asset to somebody else's dream. That I don't even think that was his dream. It was the dream that was planted in him when he was young. And I just couldn't handle that box anymore. It was killing me. So I did an egregious act, even worse than before, and got myself kicked out of the house. So the day after graduation, I get in my car, and I take my little KDUH trained mind, and I go to Tucson, Arizona. And I start putting things more in that box, because I have this negative mindset. I have this process of thinking and believing. And within a couple months, I've had an abortion, I've tried to commit suicide, and I'm now addicted to crystal meth. And I just want the pain to end, and I'm pretty darn good at it. I mean, I was overachieving even then in that area. And my life continued down that cycle until I got pregnant, and I decided to keep the baby, and I needed a new life. And I knew that I didn't have the skill set at all to do what I needed to do. So in my first act of trying to model success, I did the thing. I had one person in my family I really, really admired. Army was serving him well. I didn't really think I wanted to be told what to do so much, so I went to the Air Force, which was a good choice. And everything changed. I was put into radio and TV broadcasting. This is a person who was not allowed to have a voice, and they put me in radio and TV broadcasting. I bawled and bawled and bawled and hated every day of my job, but I was good at it. That's what they said anyway. And then got into working for the Department of Defense, Department of the Army, still in radio, broadcasting, public affairs, and had a stellar career, like advanced really fast. I was influential. I had the house, I had the toys, I had the 2 beautiful kids, I had the influence, I had the markers, I had the success, and I had the accomplishments, and I had the titles. All of the things that they say that you have to be happy. And I had a brilliant smile that I had trained, fine-tuned. But I was still that little girl on the inside that was living in that box, looking like this box. And I was going through my 3rd divorce, and I knew that I couldn't commit suicide again, but I really wanted the pain to end. That was my daily thought. How do I make the pain end? So I thought, this part of me wanted to go to Afghanistan to really tell the soldier's story and the airman's story and our military service member's story from that location. That was like the next step, the next level up. I wanted to really understand more of what that was about. This part of me wanted to do it because maybe I would be one of the ones that comes back in a box. I could die an honorable death. I could make the pain go away. Everything would be great. Nobody would know what was going on inside. But that's not how it turned out. Because, see, what I had done was I had created this life. And there's a rule in archery that I learned when I was able to take and stand in this box. And the guy that got me introduced to archery is a 4-time Paralympian. So he really knew what he was doing. And he said, Sam, he said, the neat thing is that you never shot archery before, so you don't have any bad habits to break. He said, I think that if you do everything I tell you to do, you could be the first woman to represent the U.S. in this division. I was like, that sounds fascinating. And I like shooting, so let's do that. So I walked away from my job and everything, and I moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, because they have an Olympic training center there. And another lady that she was like, no woman had ever competed in her category either. So we moved in together, complete strangers. We land in Colorado Springs, January 1st, 2015, because we're going to train at the center. And we go there, and they're like, you can't come in. There's not an archery program here. We did not research. we did not. She's a vet that's in a wheelchair, and she has a lot of issues. And I was like, find a VA that you like. And so she picked the Denver VA, which she did not research that well either. So we're like, all right, now what do we do? So we're kind of in Colorado self-teaching and all of that, but all we do morning to night is shoot archery. And we made the national team in 6 months. And then we made the world team in 8 months. Because Jeff, my coach, taught me, he said, Sammy, archery's just a skill. It's just like anything else in life. It's just a skill. But the difference between the everyday level thinking and the elite level thinking is how strong you are in bridging the gap. How strong are you from here to here? He said, a critical element of life and in archery is the process always takes care of the outcome. People get so focused on the outcome that they forget to manage the process. And it was during the process of shooting archery that I realized that my process for life had shifted to the point where I could keep my eye on the outcome, not get tied to it, and elevate my level of thinking during the process. Think about something in your life where you're not happy in it, where it's just not where you want it to be, or it's not at all like you thought it was going to be. That outcome, just like a manufacturing line, starts at a beginning, and your beginning determines your outcome. Every step you take, every step on that process is perfect. It's perfectly designed to get you the outcome that you have. So if you have an outcome and you choose to bridge the gap in your own mind and not be a victim and take control of that outcome, take control of the process, you determine your outcome. And that was the most empowering principle I learned, one of them. And I'm going to share several with you today that I know that if you apply this, is going to help you shift the way you think about life. It's going to shift the way you see yourself. It'll shift the way you see the world and how you fit into it. So I designed a process where he told me I could do this, and everybody else told me I couldn't. So they laid out some facts for me. These were the facts. To get to where you want to go, first, you got to know how to shoot. I was like, okay, that seems logical. Fact, all right. And you start off local. You know, you get a coach and you practice and then this part of the process is you start competing in some local competitions. And then this part of the process is state competitions, and then you try to make the national team, and then you get a couple international competitions under your belt. And well, that's the process. So probably by the 2020 Olympics, yeah, you'll be ready for that. But I had this voice here. I had his voice saying you could do it. And he'd been there 3 times already. And I thought, I want to listen to this voice. So what do I need on this process? I can't get all of those competitions in 16 months, or can I? So let's assume that I can, because reality is what you make of it, right? So what do I have to do? Well, obviously I have to have no life and just learn how to shoot archery. But if I come at it from somebody who doesn't know how to shoot archery, that doesn't have any competition experience, that's how I show up at the first competition. Somebody who might not feel like they belong there, who is still wearing the labels of, you don't have enough experience, you don't belong, you're not ready. So I started studying the mind. And the mind is not the brain. The brain is an organ. The mind is the activity of the brain. What drives that? And I started learning about self-talk, subconscious programming. Because remember when I talked about this little box when I grew up, and I had all these labels, and this is what I could and couldn't be? Because I was told that, and I was programmed that, so I believed that, so I lived it. You can reprogram that. It's just like software. And so I read a book. It was my first personal development book. And it's called With Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham. And he said, it's how you talk to yourself. Affirmations. So talk to yourself as if you're that person already. So I did all in. I recorded myself saying, I am a member of the 2015 U.S. archery team. I am an elite archer. I shoot 697 and above. I love to compete in front of people that I want to impress and that I want to be a part of. I am an elite archer. And I just kept saying this over and over and over, to the point where I recorded it, played it in my car, played it at sleep, played it in headphones while I was shooting. There was no other message that was going in my mind. I got visuals of the competitions I'd be going to, and I visualized me shooting and missing, because it's going to happen. And he said, one of the key elements is that you visualize yourself there, the whole experience. Remember that outcome that you're not really pleased with in your life? When you develop that process to get a different outcome, you have to put in there stations of failure, because you're going to fail. You put in those stations of failure, and you practice, and you visualize what you do afterwards. So I knew that my first competition was going to be the Arizona Cup. There were going to be 300 elite archers there. It's outdoors, and I was told about the walk of shame, so you're all there, and the buzzer goes off, and you shoot your arrow. And if you miss, when we all go get our arrows, you have to go back in the desert and try to find your arrow, while everybody else is waiting for you on the line. So I knew that was going to happen, because the odds are, you're not burying your head in the sand, right? So the first time I did it, I was like, oh, okay, we've already done this. So I walked out, and as I get my arrow, and they're all waiting on the line, it's like, you're welcome, you got an extra break. I mean, I just made a joke of it, you know? And everybody laughed. And then the second time I did it, it was the same show. And then the third time, by then they know how this is going too. I've trained them that when I do this, I'm not upset. And you can boo me, and you can harass me, and all of that. I just don't accept it. Because again, it's a label that nobody can offend me unless I choose to let that. Shakespeare says there's no good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. So if I walk in a room and somebody says, hey, stupid, and I turn around, It's because I already identify with that label. Or if I turn around and I get upset and I tell my best friend, you wouldn't believe how mad she made me. I'm so offended. How dare you call me that? Did she call me stupid? Or did she say, hey, stupid, in my general direction, and I chose to take that and put it on? Nobody can offend you unless you assign it. We live in a world that's messed up right now. We live in a time like none any that I've read about or heard about. Our polarity is off the charts. We have angry people who are raging, and we have peaceful people who are banding together with other love-minded, global consciousness, elevation-centered people. And the gap is getting further and further apart. But there's this group of people, guys, right here in the middle, who are looking for truth. And they're buying this truth as this truth. And if we don't get out there and we don't tell our story and we don't start talking about how more alike we are than we are different, those people will magnetize to the negative. It's the way the human brain works. It's our job to get out there and elevate that consciousness. It's our job to stand in the gap. It's our job to get our process so fine-tuned that when we make mistakes, when we fail, we celebrate them. Just like Thomas Edison, I think he had over 1,000 failures on how to make the light bulb. I think it was his 999th one. And his assistant is in here, and he's doing his thing, and the whole room explodes. And the dust is flying, and debris, and all of that, and his assistant gets up off the ground, and he looks up, and he's over there scribbling in his notebook. He's like, when are you going to stop this stupid dream? You have failure after failure after failure. This is ridiculous. Give it up. He looks back at his assistant and says, I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't a failure. I just figured out a brilliant process for blowing things up. And that might come in handy. It was how he framed it. So the next time somebody says something and you feel offended, instead of raging against that person, look at what it is about you, that you believe about yourself, that you identified with that statement. Because the power is all within us. And like archery, this is a competition against nobody but yourself. Life is a competition against nobody but yourself. And when you compete with nobody, nobody can compete with you. So I took this process of archery and realized, wow, it's meditation with a weapon. It got me really, really centered into what I was thinking. And it took me back to the day that I lost my arm. Because what I was thinking that day, after I had fought with my husband all night, and had fought with him all day at work, and had ridden my motorcycle to work because I lived in Kentucky, and it was October 8th, so I just celebrated my 8th Alive Day, and the fall colors were beautiful, and it's always so calming, and I had this beautiful mountain winding road to get to work. I was working at Fort Knox, and I get out of work, and that peaceful serenity was gone. And I'm on my motorcycle, and I'm riding out on a road that I wasn't familiar with. And I wasn't doing anything stupid. I had all my gear on. I was going the speed limit. But I wasn't present. I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I was on autopilot. I was doing a lifelong habit of these labels. You're not enough. You're not lovable. This isn't going to work. Men are awful. You're stupid. Men are awful. Men are awful. Men are awful. I think the track was stuck, you know. They're all liars. They're all abusers. They're all, yeah. So this was my mindset. And this was what was going on in my head. And I didn't see the debris in the road. And the bike went down. And as my hip hit the asphalt, it spun me around. And it sucked my sleeve into the drive belt. And it ground me into the back of the motorcycle. And it took off my arm from the wrist to the armpit. And I was awake the whole time. And boy, did I figure out how to become present. And all I could think was, this can't be happening. And as it dragged me down the highway and into the ditch, I'm laying in the ditch with my motorcycle, and the wheel is screaming because the throttle got stuck on my face. And I pull myself out of the motorcycle, and I'm running down the road just screaming, oh God, oh Jesus. Oh God, oh Jesus. And I looked down, and my arm's just gone. And the lady that was in front of me grabbed me, and she stopped her vehicle and put me in the ditch and left. And I'm laying there in the ditch. And everything that I had been wishing for my whole life was coming true. It was kind of like the best, saddest Christmas ever. Because I realized the pain was finally going to end. And I wasn't afraid, and I didn't have this vision of my life and all the highs and the lows. I just looked back on it and went, God, are you serious? 41 years of life, and that's what I did with it? And I could finally see clearly that this little box and all these labels, that was somebody else's story. It was the narrative in my mind that created the outcome in that ditch. And the thing is that I chose every day, like, hey, stupid, to grab that out and take it on as my identity. I just simply was modeling a process that really got really crappy outcomes. And for the first time in my life, I'm laying there going, I did this. I did this. Nobody did this to me. God didn't do this to me. My mom didn't do this to me. And she did all the stuff to me. I mean, she was to blame for everything. You know, something about moms, they're easy to blame. And I hadn't spoken to her in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. Nothing more than cold little snippets. I was going through my third divorce. My kids weren't speaking to me. I left nobody behind that I really thought would miss me. Because who misses a miserable wench? And that's what I was. But I had all the checklists of success. I looked good in this box. But I didn't know how to love myself, and you can only love people to the level you can love yourself. So as I'm laying there, not beating myself up for the first time, but seeing myself differently for the first time, seeing that the process that I was living out every day led me to that ditch, then I went like, oh, it's also going to be over. And in that moment, I don't know how to explain it, that a veil parted, to use that term. The lights changed, the colors changed, the sound, everything changed, and I heard a voice, and the voice said, you are mine. So when the creator, the source, the spirit, the divine intelligence shows up at that very moment, as I'm kind of going over the list of the 10 commandments that I've broken, all of them, and it says, you are mine, that changed things. And something happened in that moment where I was able to step out and go, wow, my identity isn't a victim, my identity is the beloved. What does that mean? And if I could bottle that moment for you guys and force feed it down your throats, I would so do that in a heartbeat. That kind of awareness, that kind of shift is incredibly powerful. And I have been looking for a way to repeat that moment in the ditch over and over and over and over. And it wasn't really until I discovered archery and meditation with a weapon that I found a way to sort of replicate the process. So if you will, before I finish the story and what I was told, I want to step you through a little bit of what happened in that ditch. So I'm going to ask that they dim the lights, and I've recorded a meditation that I invite you to share with me. It's something I do on a daily basis. It's something I do to work with kids who suffer PTSD, adults who suffer PTSD, all of my clients, my family and friends. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to play this. And I would ask that follow the instructions. Everybody's eyes are going to be closed. And if this is way outside of your comfort zone, if this feels way too woo-woo for you, I will throw the science at you afterwards. So just know that that's coming, and just be present and give it a shot, okay? All right, so I'm going to tell a story about how important it is to practice failure. So I'm at the Paralympics, and I was talking to somebody earlier about this, and you get a chance to go compete and shoot on the elimination gold medal round once. You get like 3 minutes the day before the elimination rounds. And competition where I practiced failure. I didn't necessarily practice this kind of mark. I wanted to leave my mark in Rio. I mean, I really did. I wanted to not only just set a record as being the only person, but I wanted to shoot well. So we get to go get familiarized with the medal rounds. You know, it's a different range and everything. So we're up on the podium, and they've got 2 targets down this side, and there's 2 targets down this side, and you get a couple minutes. So I'm shooting with a shoulder harness instead of the mouth tab, because a couple of my teammates kept losing teeth, and I was like, I've lost enough parts. Not doing that. Well, you know, anytime you add more moving parts, there's more things that can fail. And I'm having a hard time with this thing, and it's failing on me. So I'm on the line there, and it's a strap, kind of, it's a beast of a thing strapped on, and it's got a mounting thing with a mechanical release here, and I hook on, and I go to draw back, and I get to about here, and it fires off. And I hear it hit as I see it hit, because I just shot out the scoreboard. Lights, flares, people freaking out everywhere. And I'm like looking at my coach, and he's like, good job? I'm like, hold one. I jumped off the podium, and I ran down there, and I signed the scoreboard, and I took a picture, a selfie with it. So I left my mark in Rio. And, you know, the thing is that could have, people were really ticked off. It was a big deal, because they needed that scoreboard for the medal matches the next day, right? Did it knock me out of the competition? No. But it did prepare me for the next day. So in the elimination rounds, you have 20 seconds to shoot an arrow. So the lady I was shooting against is on a stool here, and she's every 10 seconds. I mean, she's fast. So if she doesn't use all of her 20 seconds, you have to be ready. Beeper goes off. You can have your arrow knocked, but you got 20 seconds. So at the end of the first 3 arrows, and you shoot 3 arrows at a time, we're tied. I'm feeling good about this. You know, I mean, it's heart's racing, and I'm doing my breathing exercises and my centering and all of that. And get up there, and she shoots the first arrow, and I go, and it won't hook, and it won't hook. Well, I don't have a second hand. I can't just reach up there. So I have to lean this thing down, lean it against my hand, fix this, pull it up, go to draw again. Just as I get it about here, the buzzer goes off. So I didn't get to shoot my arrow. I had a big fat 0. This is the highest level competition there is in the world, and I just scored a 0. What are my chances of winning? What are my chances of beating her? Now, I could play the odds and, well, maybe she'll get nervous, maybe something will happen and she'll miss. Maybe, you know, maybe I can still do this. That's what I could have thought. But remember I said the value of practicing failure? In archery, as in life, the most important arrow, the most important moment of your life is the arrow that you're shooting now. So that big fat 0, I'd already forgotten, because I had practiced staying present in the moment and giving the arrow that I'm shooting now everything I got. The moment on I'm now, everything I've got. And I came back and shot a 10. And that's when I won. Because the thing that could have taken me out of the game, that could have defeated me, I had already practiced out of. So I never lose, I either win or learn. I learned to go back to shooting mouth tab and just tell my dentist to quiet down. So if we could drop the lights down, and like I said, just go with this. You will not be damaged. You will not be labeled. I do not label. But I'm stepping you through this to show you what I'm going to teach you next.
Let's enter into the area of our mind for super learning, creativity, and resilience to a changing world. Every night and morning, listen to this meditation as you create heart-mind coherence. First, ground yourself. Place both feet on the floor, legs uncrossed, back straight. Hands to your side, on the armrests, or on your lap, uncrossed. Now close your eyes. This is the obvious signal to your body and mind that you are turning your awareness within. You are connecting with your heart. In ancient traditions, they would touch their heart center. So take your hand or the tips of your fingers and place it right over your heart center. This is an important step because your awareness goes where you feel the sensation. It shifts your mind to that location. Keeping your hand over your heart center, I now invite you to slow your breathing. This is a powerful signal, signaling your body and mind that you are safe. As you breathe in through your nose, push your belly way out. Breathing out through your mouth. Begin breathing to a slow count of 5. Breathing in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out through the mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue at this pace. This tells your body that you are in a safe place. The only time we breathe deeply and slowly is when we are safe. The next step is very powerful. It's the key to creating the heart-mind coherence. I want you to feel one or more of these 4 emotions: gratitude, compassion, care, appreciation. Think about someone or something in your life that you are grateful for, you have compassion for, you care about, or have appreciation for. Hold that person or that thing in your mind, continuing to breathe deeply and slowly. Feel one or more of those emotions. Let it permeate your body. Place yourself in the experience of that emotion, seeing what you see through your own eyes, feeling what you felt at that moment when you're with that person or with that thing. Focusing on the emotions or one or more of these triggers the heart-mind coherence. It places you in super learning, activates creativity, and gives you access to resilience in this changing world. Take your awareness back to your heart, breathing deeply into your heart space. Repeat these words to yourself. I know that I am pure spirit. I always have been, and I always will be. There is inside me a place of confidence and quietness and security, where all things are known and understood. This is the universal mind of which I am part and which responds to me as I ask of it. This universal mind knows the answer to all my problems, and even now, the answers are within me. I needn't struggle for them, and I needn't worry or strive for them. When the time comes, the answers will be there. They will come from within me through the power of love and trust. I give my problems to the great mind of the infinite intelligence. I let go of them, confident that the correct answers will return to me when they are needed. Through the great law of attraction, everything in life that I need for my work and fulfillment will come to me. It is not necessary that I strain about this, only believe. For in the strength of my belief, my faith will make it so. I see the hand of divine intelligence all about me, in the flower, the tree, the brook, the meadow. I know that the infinite intelligence that created all of these things is right now in me and around me, and that I can call upon it from my slightest need. I know that my body is a manifestation of pure spirit, and that spirit is perfect. Therefore, my body is perfect also. I enjoy life, for each day brings a constant demonstration of the power and wonder of the universe and myself. No matter what obstacles or undesirable circumstances cross my path, I do not accept it, for it is nothing but an illusion. No obstacle or undesirable circumstance can be to the mind of God, which is in me, around me, and serving me now. Continuing to breathe deeply and slowly, we'll move into phase 3, which is very powerful, and this is the bridge from any position of powerlessness and emotional pain. In life, you get what you put out there, and it's time to forgive. This process has nothing to do with the other person. It has only to do with your sense of peace. That means someone could have done something morally or ethically wrong, and this is not about condoning it. This is about releasing you from the feeling of victimhood. This is about freeing you. That's what embracing the frequency of forgiveness does. It puts you back into the driver's seat of being the creator. Now think of someone in your life that you'd like to feel closer to that may have hurt you. And repeat these words to yourself. This is someone who was once a child. This is someone who was innocent, joyful, and free. This is someone who was forced to grow up. This is someone who has given up on dreams. This is someone who has acted out of fear. This is someone who has known suffering, sadness, and defeat. This is someone who tries not to show pain. This is someone whom I can forgive. I am someone who was once a child. I was innocent, joyful, and free. I was forced to grow up. I have given up on dreams. I have acted out of fear. I have known suffering, sadness, and defeat. I am someone who tries not to show pain. I am someone whom I can forgive. Continuing to breathe deeply and slowly. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
When I heard those words, "You are mine," it was the first time that my mind was quiet. It was the first time that I could hear a voice other than my own, the voices in my head. It was the first time I was really, really present. And it was more than just the words, "You are mine." I was able to redefine who I was. So first my mind was quiet. Then I got to see myself differently. Then I chose to forgive others. And then I chose to forgive myself. And when I did that process, this produces something that's called post-traumatic growth. And they've scientifically studied those who have undergone trauma with like experiences. And what it does is it hardwires your brain. Absolutely collapses neurons of old beliefs and thoughts and creates new ones. My brain was permanently rewired in that ditch. And that's what this process does. It rewires your brain. It lets you see possibilities that were always there in front of me. Nothing changed in that ditch other than I could see possibilities differently. I could make better choices. I learned in that ditch that the difference between everyday living thinking, and elite level thinking was just the choice in how I saw myself. That lens that I saw the world through before disappeared, and I have a new lens. And I see it through the peace and through the choice of who I want to be and what the world is and how I fit in it. And I see it through the lens of forgiveness. And when you can own those things, then you can love others because you can then love yourself. This is the step in the process. Remember when I said earlier, where you start from determines your outcome? When you change your starting point, to that 0 point, guys, you don't have to lose an arm. That's the thing that ticked me off the most once I figured this out. I was like, I didn't need to lose an arm for this. I just needed to do that woo-woo meditation thing, which I thought was witchcraft. But they've actually scientifically shown that in your body right now, because of the heart-mind coherence, and for you science geeks, go to Heart Math Institute. They've got tons of research and studies on this. Getting us out of our head and into our heart and unifying those is where the creativity comes from. And right now, there are a little bit more than 1,300 healing hormones going through your body. And they are upregulating genes for health and healing right now, and will continue to do so for the next 6 hours. You will be able to think clearly. Do you feel a little bit better? Do you feel a little zen? This is a beautiful way to start and end the day. Einstein knew this principle, and he would, before he went to sleep, would give a command to his subconscious. He would tell them the problem that he was working on to the infinite intelligence and ask for a solution. And time after time after time, in the middle of the night or the morning, he would come up with the answer and get up and write it down. This really is where the elite level thinking starts in everyday life. That's the gift that I give to you, and I hope that you use it. Think about the process always is designed for the outcome. The most important arrow you're shooting is the one you're shooting now. And you have control of your starting point at every moment of every day. You never have to live in this box of labels. You can live over here in infinite possibility. Thank you very, very much for allowing me to take this time with you. And I'm open to questions now. Yeah, if you want to email me. My email is sammi@sammitucker.com, S-A-M-M-I at Sammi Tucker. Desiree also has it. I'll email you the link for it. Yeah, absolutely. And that, the first portion of that comes from Greg Braden, studying ancient texts in Heart Math Institute. There's actually a scientific proven, they've done EKGs and all the scans when somebody is in a meditative state doing this process, and it activates balance between the left and right hemisphere and balance between the brain and the heart. So those research geeks, that's the Heart Math Institute. The middle meditation was from 3 Magic Words, and the end one is from Chris Vonderman, and it's just a forgiveness meditation. So they're my 3, because they really do replicate what happened in that ditch. Anything else? Did I zen you out too much to ask questions? Yes?
Would you be able to show us how you...
Oh, yeah, yeah. So they brought a target, but my arrows will go right through that target. So I don't think that the lawyers in here would like that, right? So I draw 45 pounds back with my molars, and you don't bite up here. You use your molars because the jaw muscles are actually the strongest muscle in the body, which my mom had no doubt because she said I've been shooting my mouth off my whole life. So right there in the back of the molars. And then if I released it without an arrow, the whole thing would blow up. So the science geeks, there's way too much kinetic energy, and the arrow takes it out. And if there's no arrow, then it goes into the limbs, and it just blows up. Yeah. So I don't want to cause any premature births or anything like that. Blow the Zen right out of the water. Well, did you enjoy that? Did you learn anything? Yes.
So once you go through this process and you were talking about where you found yourself at that point in time in your life, kids weren't talking to you, 3 bad marriages, all that stuff.
Right.
Come to this new realization. How did you go back and fix some of those relationships and do some of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so after I kind of had this rewiring, I'm in the ditch, and when a soldier showed up with a tourniquet, put a tourniquet on my arm, I realized I was going to live. I got excited, which was ridiculous. I'm in the ditch excited for the first time in my life. And people are like, you're going to be okay. It's like, I know this is going to be awesome. I don't know what it's going to mean, but it's going to be awesome. I'm literally saying that as they're dragging me out of the ditch. In the hospital, you know, I'm like, I don't know what this is going to mean, but it's going to be awesome because I just had a new lens. And so I looked at, again, the process. So what was I around? What was my environment? You know, Grandma used to say you can dress a pig up and take it to church, but it's still going to be a pig, you know? So what I did was I absolutely took a hatchet and severed all my friendships, every person that I associated with, because I looked at their life, because I'd been able to look at my life from above, you know, outside of my body, and went, these are great people, they have value, but they don't add value. So step 1 was I expected a great outcome. Step 2 was I eliminated things that wouldn't get me to that outcome. And unfortunately, the situation with my kids is still the same. They don't know me now. They don't want to know me now. They don't know that I've changed. They have no connection. My youngest daughter has severed relationships with everybody. I mean, she is 100% isolated, and it terrifies me because I taught her to do that. And she's got a daughter. And my oldest daughter has 2 kids. And they're just mirroring what I taught them to do. But all the other relationships, yes. As a matter of fact, I just reunited with my 3rd husband a couple months ago for the first time in 6 years. And it was tormenting him, the fact that we never had closure, and he was feeling bad about the things he's done. He got, guess what, in a really bad motorcycle accident and was severely hurt and is on disability. I mean, but yeah. And so it kind of woke him up a little bit, and he's gone to therapy for PTSD, and we had a really beautiful healing time there of forgiving each other and letting each other go. And yeah, I was able to do that. All of my other relationships are healthy and healed. But the friends that I have now, just like when I shot archery, you know, when people said that you couldn't do it, I didn't go to the range and shoot with people. I shot from the end of my hallway, down the hall, out the living room, and out the sliding glass doors into the backyard. Because, well, that's really good incentive not to miss. And if I went to the archery range, everybody would be bringing me down to their level. I didn't want to be a hunter archer. I wanted to be an Olympic, Paralympic archer. So I only shot with people who had already done that were world champions and world elite level thinkers. So I changed who I put in my environment, you know? Yes?
Do you ever find yourself slipping back to your old like negative mentality? And if so, like how do you get yourself back up after you've had this revelation?
Yeah, it's practicing failure. Absolutely. And it's so relevant and timely that you had that question, because like I said, I got out of that ditch and I was so freaking excited about life, and I made all these massive changes, and I was, you know, just loving this whole positive thing and how it was changing my whole reality. And there was a part of me inside that was kind of afraid to go back and deal with the fact that I did that to myself. Like I did it on an intellectual level, but not really on a heart level. And there's a couple areas in my life that I was looking at my life and I'm like, I don't want this outcome. And this was only like 3 weeks ago. I don't want this outcome, and I'm doing all the things, like all the process things are perfect. This shouldn't be the outcome I'm getting. What's the problem? And so I was doing a meditation just like this, and at the end, I'm like throwing my hands up. Like, what is the freaking problem? Let's deal with this. And then it hit me that I was so mad at myself. So mad at myself because I was instantly healed from meth. There were times when I should have died that I didn't. None of that was good enough to wake me up and snap me out of this box. I had to freaking lose a hand. Really? And I didn't realize how pissed off I was at myself. And it was that underlying anger. And I used to make a joke that this arm really isn't good for anything other than hanging grocery sacks off of, because it really is power. I got it dealt like you wouldn't believe. And, you know, God's like, do you realize how you're speaking to yourself? You are speaking uselessness into your own body. And I didn't really relate that, you know, because most of the time when you tell a joke, it's underlying anger. That's what sarcasm is the tip of the iceberg of anger. And once I cleared that up, and honestly, I made sure that I was home alone. I made sure, I live in a townhouse. I made sure that waited till the neighbor was gone. And, you know, just had a bloody raging fit. Throwing and screaming and bawling and getting it out, because you can't diffuse a bomb like that. You have to explode it. You don't want an EOD. You don't want an unexploded ordnance. I had to get it out of my system and forgive myself. So yeah, it's just being that awareness. Yeah, and I'm gonna find other things in my life that are still not all the outcomes that I want. And yeah, we're human. That's part of the process. And negativity sticks to us like Velcro, and positivity is like, you know, oil in a frying pan. It's just, whoop, gone. You got to work really hard to get a hold of that. So yeah, that's part of it. But forgive yourself, and get rid of that stinking rage. Yes?
What are the practical next steps after having done this meditation of furthering that and furthering the manifestation of what that does for you?
Right, so a great exercise I call, it's just a question and answer. Take a piece of paper and write a line down the center. And there's different categories of life. There's career, there's love, there's community, there's health, there's finances. Pick a category in one of those categories that you don't like the outcome. And in cursive, and this activates the coherence of the left and right brain, gets you kind of centered. You've already done this. Write out, I deserve abundance in love. And the first thing that comes in your mind, don't overthink it, write it in the next column. And then again in cursive, I deserve abundance in love. Then whatever comes to your mind, write it down. And just do that until nothing new comes up. And the first time I did that, 3 marriages, love was an area that I was not happy with the outcome. I was shocked at the things that came up. Because I went to write and I was like, ooh, that can't be true. Because the thing that my subconscious brought up was, no, you don't. You're broken. You're worthless. You're tainted. You're not lovable. And I was like, oh my God, I lost a hand to get rid of this stuff. What am I doing it with my head again? And because I hadn't brought that up. So again, that's a little truth that I was assigning a big truth label to. Where did that come from? So all of those words of "you're not enough," where did that come from? Well, I was sexually, physically, and emotionally abused as a kid. That's where it came from. But I took that experience on as my permanent identity. And hold up a belief you have, because you may believe you're worthy of love, that's what you're saying up here and here, but in your subconscious, if there's a conflict, that's what your outcome's going to be. So I had to look at each one of those statements and realize whose voice it is. A lot of it was my grandfather. Realized that my grandfather was a broken person, hurt people, and is it true or is it not? Is it a fact or is it somebody's opinion? And once you can see that that's just somebody else's opinion and it's not a fact, it's like the legs of a table. They don't stand up when you take the legs away. And so then that's an affirmation. And that center part of that meditation will take on new meaning. So challenge every one of those beliefs that you're subconscious. And that's where this exercise works so well, because we tend to take those little voices and shove them to the back and pretend they're not there. But acknowledging them and writing them down takes the power away from them. Now you know what to change. So that's a great, great next step. And look at people in your life that are energizing that belief. Who is telling you that you're not good enough to do, achieve, or have something? Who is telling you you're not the type of person? You're too tall, you're too ugly, you're too pretty, you're too short, you're too weak, you're too stupid, you're too broke, you're too whatever. And if those people, write out the list of the people you spend your time around with the most at work, in your hobbies, in your communities, in your family, and just your gut instinct, are they adding a positive to that belief or a negative? And all the people that are a negative, either eliminate them from your life or really cut down the time that you're spending with them. And if they're coworkers, because we know that you can't eliminate coworkers because you go to jail for that. I used to ask for volunteers to have somebody with an apple on their head, but too many coworkers were pushing other people up, so I don't do that anymore.
We had a list in the office.
Do you? Yes, like, hope she does it, yes. It's a boundaries thing. You know, a lot of the people that were toxic in my life at the time were coworkers at work. And I had to honor and respect myself enough to say, listen, I value you as a person, but I'm making some changes in my life, and I can't have your type of energy in my life. So I want you to know that I do value you as a person, but I'm ending this relationship. Or if there's a coworker that's really gossiping, you can say, you know what, I've put a challenge to myself that I won't let negative thoughts occur in my mind because it really affects me. So I appreciate that, but I'm going to remove myself from this conversation. They're going to get pissy. They are. And they're going to say you're, up on your high horse and whatever. But listen, guys, you get one life. The thing that I want the most is if you ever get a moment to reflect on your life before you die, you don't think what I thought. Because it's too late then. Not everybody gets a second chance. So that moment of awkwardness and confusion, and they're going to call you names or whatever, and so what? That's one moment in your whole life, and you're worth more than that. So those are some of my favorite tips that you can do easily every day, and you're worth it. You're freaking worth it. Yes?
So you said that there was a lady who put you in the ditch,
Mm-hmm.
but there sounded like there was more to the story because she put you in the ditch and then she just left.
She was a toxic coworker. And she didn't leave me there because she was toxic. She was a combat vet, and she had been blown up in Iraq, and actually her face had been blown up, and she had cadaver bones, and so major PTSD. I was not a pretty sight at the time. Artery was gone. Yeah. So she was off having a moment, and I honor her for that. She stopped me from running down the ditch, down the road. So yeah. It was hard. It was hard on her. Very, very hard on her. Yes?
It sounds like you've had some important mentors in your life, maybe. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of mentorship in your life?
Yeah, because you end up taking on the characteristics, traits, beliefs, actions, attitudes of the people around you. So for 14 months after my accident, I lived with strangers because I didn't have any family there. I actually went home with my command sergeant major and his wife. That was awkward, very awkward. But they were great people, and I didn't see anybody. I didn't know how to pick a good person. So I didn't pick new friends. I isolated myself, and I read and studied and read and researched. And so my mentors became authors and books and people who were like modeled success. I was like, who are these people that have gone through hard times? You know, I love Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a chiropractor out of Portland, who was a cyclist, and he got hit at 55 miles an hour by a truck and paralyzed from here down. And so they were going to do surgery, and he's like, the chances of me walking after surgery, and they're like, not so much. He's like, just take me home. And he realized, he had this moment where he's like, something is telling me not to have the surgery. That something is outside of me and probably smarter than me, so maybe that something has something to tell me. So what he did was he started visualizing his spine healing. And so every day, because he was a chiropractor, he knew the anatomy, he would visualize his bones fusing together and his nerves healing. And when he would break concentration, he would start again. You know, he'd make it 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And he would never stop until he would keep his concentration all the way up his spine. And in 14 months, he was cycling again. He literally fused his body back together through the power of thought. Dr. Bruce Lipton, I think, was a biology teacher, maybe at Stanbridge, and he was teaching biology, and he quite accidentally discovered that a cell that's supposed to be a fat cell, in the right environment, can become a muscle cell. And a muscle cell can become a bone cell. And Dr. Emoto did scientific studies. Now it's scientific. Back then, he would just take bottles of purified water and he would write hate and awful negative things on the water. And he'd take another bottle and he would write love and joy and just let them set. And this one would rot and have mold and decay, and this one would be perfect. He would freeze droplets of water and play metal music and angry music and freeze it during the process of that. And the crystals would be distorted and gross and ugly, and he would play Mozart and speak lovingly to other crystals as he froze it, and it's beautiful and crystalline. And so there's all sorts of things out there where people are realizing, well, wait a second, we can change our thoughts and change our body. Dr. Joe Dispenza has done, they brought in all the world researchers now and, you know, tagged up all the people during these meditations and watched as people are going through meditations and having tumors heal, and watch what's going on in the brain and watching the tumors shrink. So there's research now that you can actually change your body with your thoughts, that there aren't actually any genes for disease. It's thought that upregulate genes to distort and become cancer and illness, or they downregulate it. And just like with the meditation you just did, that upregulated your genes for healing. So I started reading about people who were thinking out of the box and who were changing their life. So I don't listen to TV, I don't listen to the news, because you know, you've heard the saying that you become the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. How much time do you get up in the morning and turn on the news or turn on the radio? That's your number one mentor right there, is your music or the news. Is it getting the outcome that you want? So I don't, and I rarely listen to music that has words at all, so, because that's your number one mentor. Yes?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Which I know I can ask whenever you drive back.
That's right.
First question is, at some point, you decided to start sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the first time that inspired you to tell your story, and what did you observe after you did?
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. And I went home with my command sergeant major and his wife, and she just had elbow surgery. And they didn't assign me an OT. So we went to the Fort Knox hospital there on Fort Knox for her appointment. And I walk in, and this thing was huge. It was club-like. And I had to hold it out straight. I couldn't drop it down. And so I walk in, and she's like, oh, what happened to you? And this motorcycle accident, and I'm all whacked out on drugs. I'm still on Dilaudid and methadone at that point. And she's like, well, who's your OT? And I said, I don't have one. She said, well, you do now. And we started talking, and she's like, wow, you have a great attitude. I'm holding my arm up, sorry. Habit. Walked around for 6 months like this. She's like, you have a really great attitude. Why? So I told her about the experience, and she's like, I talk at universities. Would you come and be the patient model advocate and talk to students and doctors and admins about the patient aspect of, you know, the prosthetic and the amputations and things like that. And so when I tell my story, even though people haven't lost an arm, we've all lost something. We've all caused ourselves just, you know, hurt and pain and discomfort and destruction and all of that. So people can relate to some aspect of my story. And a lot of them are like, well, if you've lost an arm and you can get over it, I guess I can get over that divorce. Or, you know, the fact that I didn't go to college because mom said women don't go to college, or whatever the story is that we're believing, whatever the narrative is, that's the biggest outcome. People change their narrative. You know, if we've ever read a book and then like got it on audiobook and it's got a good narrator and a bad narrator, destroys the book, right? You're like, the content's good, but the narration is bad. Get a better narrator. So yeah, that's what telling my story helps people do. Yeah.
Before I ask my second question, I want to see if anybody else is inspired to ask any question.
Anybody? It's all yours.
So let me relate to the audience first.
Okay.
I know I'm a parent and I'm a mom. Hands of those who have children. Thank you. That's a relevant question.
Yeah.
I'm inspired to share your story with my child.
Mm-hmm.
How should I go about telling it instead of talking to my child as a mother?
Tell a story that you heard, because that's the beautiful part about telling stories. So we are wired for story. We learn through metaphor and story. If I came out here and threw a bunch of scientific facts at you, those that are science geeks would remember some of it. The rest of you would think that was awful. You know, you wouldn't remember anything. So just tell my story, and he'll pick up his own narrative and put in it. That's why when we go to movies and it's a good story, we lose time. We get in that zone, and we always become the hero, right? We can kind of relate with the villain, but we always become the hero, and that's what story does. And then we learn through that. I mean, if you look at any spiritual text, you know, there's the parables, and, you know, Jesus always talked in parables, and Buddha and Tao and all the poems, you know, they tell a story because that's what lands the lesson. So, yeah. You're welcome. Yes?
So on your YouTube, it said you're a coach. Have you now transitioned your story into a way of helping others and coaching them as well?
Yeah, so my passion is, remember when I said we have this huge contrast that's going on in the world? Like, there is more anger and violence and separation than, you know, it's amazing. And I know, and I find, and I've seen it lived out, when people get into their own personal narrative of their story and realize that it doesn't define them, but when you can turn your pain into your purpose and you share your personal story, it heals you, and it gives permission to others to heal. So I coach people on how to take the pain of their past and turn it into their purpose and share it, whether it's in their business or whether it's in their personal life, whether they want to write a book. Because the thing is that every day we're writing a page in our book. Every day, and when we turn that page, we can't change it. But do we want to keep the same narration going on? So sharing your personal story, and I teach public speaking and things like that as well. And I also teach kids and adaptives how to shoot. So I run clinics and things like that. Yeah. So the power is in the story. The people with the most influence are the ones that tell their story. Because if you know 5 plumbers and somebody says, "Hey, do you know a good plumber?" You're gonna recommend the plumber whose story you know. That's how it is. Yeah. So my job is to elevate human consciousness so that we can all live in how much we're alike instead of living in how different we are. Because the thing is that we're not this body. I could lose this whole arm and I lose nothing of me. I am the consciousness. This body, like in that meditation, I'm a manifestation of perfect spirit, which means my body is perfect. You know?
How does that resonate with your former military colleagues?
So it's interesting. I started doing resilience training and meditation training for Mountain Home Air Force Base because they're like, all right, we need to train people how to be resilient in times of conflict. And they absolutely, if I do like this and then I come at them with science, I get 90% buy-in. Because people are realizing that we got to quiet the noise. And when they learn what it's doing to their body and they learn how to change their narration just through meditation, it's very powerful. So emotional freedom technique or tapping, has anybody heard of that? So there's meridian points on our body. And remember when I said my brain was rewired? Every thought produces a neurological pattern in the brain which sends chemicals down the central nervous system that goes out to the tissues and muscles, attaches to ourselves, produces a feeling that goes right back up the central nervous system and validates the thought. So that becomes like a trail. And the more we think that, it becomes like a road. And then it's a superhighway, and then it's a 5-lane interstate. And so there's meridian points where they intersect, and when you think about something that you're stressed out, you can tap on those meridian points. And what that does while you're in that stressful mode is it basically earthquakes that superhighway. And it takes the emotional charge out of the thought. It doesn't take the thought away at all, but it takes the emotional charge away from it. The VA has now integrated this in their alternative health as a validated, scientifically proven alternative to talk therapy for PTSD. Meditation is now being taught for PTSD therapy. Neurolinguistics programming, which is a long word for just the scientific study of success, how the body and mind creates reality, is being used for rapid relief of PTSD. Columbine, when that happened, they brought in teams of specialists to teach the teachers and the students and the first responders how to do EFT. So I am finding a lot more acceptance than I ever expected. And I think it's because the science is leading the way in front of it now, and it's not religion at all, but science and spirituality are now really just one, like they always have been. One is proving the other. So, yeah. Yes, yes.
What are some of your, oh, I don't really need a mic. What are some of your goals now?
My goal is to spread the message that I just shared with you guys, to empower people to take back their creative control and change the consciousness of the world. Because if we don't take action now, this polarized section here that's angry and raging is very active. And if we don't step in the gap, the whole tide is going this way. And we're in a world now where you can't just stay in the middle anymore. So my job, my purpose is to take everybody, elevate the consciousness, and heal. Thank you, guys. Yes, one more.
Have you ever gone home since you left?
Gone home to Nebraska? Yes, yeah. As a matter of fact, I go, last year I brought a team of 5 practitioners for NLP and EFT, and we taught it to the academic instructors and the teachers, parents and students from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation where I grew up to deal with PTSD and trauma. And yeah, so I do go back home. It's still very, very sad, but you change a nation by changing the kids. So it's got to start with the kids. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, we're best friends now. I moved to Boise, Idaho. We sat and cried every day for 6 months because there was so much pain. And the thing is my mom was just a little girl reiterating the patterns and behaviors that she was taught. It's a learned behavior, and that's why it rips my heart out that my kids are doing it now, because I have 2 granddaughters that are being taught this passively. They don't even know. But when that teenage granddaughter or teenage girl gets ticked off, who do you think she's going to know to take it out after? Mamas. We got to stop it. We got to stop it with the kids. That's what we got to do. Well, you don't got to do anything, but I would invite you. I would invite you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.